Hi everyone. For this week's video, I'm going to be talking about the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle is nature's way of refusing carbon atoms, which travels from the atmosphere into organisms in the earth and then back into the atmosphere over and over again. Most carbon is stored in rocks and sediments, while the rest is stored in the ocean, atmosphere, and living organisms. I'm going to explain now the carbon cycle as it moves through the atmosphere into plants and ends up in the ocean. So carbon moves from the atmosphere to plants. In the atmosphere, carbon is attached to oxygen in a gas called carbon dioxide, CO2. Through the process of photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is pulled from the air to produce food made from carbon for plant growth. Carbon moves from plants to animals through food chains. The carbon that is in plants moves to the animals that then eat them. Carbon moves from plants and animals into the soil, while carbon moves from living things to the atmosphere. Carbon moves from fossil fuels to the atmosphere when fuels are burned. When humans burn fossil fuels to power factories, power plants, cars, and trucks, most of carbon quickly enters the atmosphere as carbon dioxide gas. Carbon moves from the atmosphere to the oceans. The oceans and other bodies of water absorb some carbon from the atmosphere, and the carbon is dissolved into the water. Most of Earth's carbon is stored in rocks and sediments. The rest is located in the oceans, atmosphere, and in living organisms. Photosynthesis and respiration both play an important role in the carbon cycle, but are essentially opposite of one another. Photosynthesis removes CO2 from the atmosphere and replaces it with O2. Respiration then takes O2 from the atmosphere and replaces it with CO2. However, these processes are not in balance. Not all organic matter is oxidized. Some is buried in sediment rocks, and the result is that over geological time there has been more oxygen put into the atmosphere and carbon dioxide removed by photosynthesis than the reverse. The ocean plays an important role in the global carbon cycle. Carbon moves in and out of the ocean on a daily, but it is also stored there for thousands of years. Carbon dioxide from the atmosphere dissolves in the surface water of the oceans. Some of the carbon dioxide stays as dissolved gas, but much of it gets turned into other things. Photosynthesis by tiny marine plants in the sunlight surface water turns the carbon into organic matter. Many organisms use carbon to make calcium carbonate, a building material of shells and skeletons. Other chemical processes create calcium carbonate in the water. The using up of carbon by biological and chemical processes allows more carbon dioxide to enter the water from the atmosphere. Human activities have tremendous impact on the carbon cycle. Burning fossil fuels, changing land use, and using limestone to make concrete all transfer significant quantities of carbon into the atmosphere. As a result, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is rapidly rising over the years. The ocean absorbs much of the carbon dioxide that is released from burning fossil fuels. This extra carbon dioxide is lowering the ocean's pH. So I found a picture of the cycle on Google, and this one really just explains, and I think the pictures are really useful with the arrows that I just explained, and how it starts with sunlight and then moves into the organisms. Sorry if you can't see that. And then it goes into like the fossil fuels, and it goes into like the respiration and how it's getting into the air, and then it goes into like the factories that are really needing it. And it's all a CO2 cycle that gets then brought into the ocean and dead organisms and waste product, and then animal respiration as a result. So I also found that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas and traps heat in the atmosphere. Without it and other greenhouse gases, Earth would be a frozen world. But since the start of Industrial Revolution about 150 years ago, humans have burned so much fuel and released so much carbon dioxide into the air that global climate has risen over 1 degree Fahrenheit. The atmosphere has not held this much carbon for at least 420,000 years, according to data from ice cores. The recent increase in amounts of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide is having a significant impact on the warming of our planet. So I thought that was pretty interesting that that's not something we usually think about when we think about greenhouses, like when we go into them, and that carbon dioxide plays a role, and that this carbon cycle is literally just happening all around us, but we don't pay attention to that when you go into a greenhouse. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So yeah, that's my video on the carbon cycle. Hopefully you guys understand it better. Thank you.